Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Sorry about that. Thank you all for coming out today to the Board of State Community Corrections for today's Bidders Conference for the Strengthening Law Enforcement and Community Relations. We really appreciate it. I think I've had a chance to correspond with some of you, and we certainly look forward to hearing many of your questions and to provide some information today. Before we get started, I wanted to provide you just a few basics about what's in store for today and some of our outline. A couple of acknowledgements. One, today's meeting is being live streamed. So if you see the camera right in the middle, when you come up to the podium at some point, which will prompt you, we may pan it over that way as well. So folks who aren't able to be here today can see and can hear you. So when possible, please try to speak into the microphone. If you have any questions, we would greatly appreciate that. Subsequently, because we are webcasted, it's a bit more formal with us using the podium. We prefer to be a little bit closer to you. So please don't hold that formality against us. We really do want to interact with you and hope that this becomes an interactive meeting. Restrooms are located outside of the door on your left. You'll see a sign for both the male and female restrooms. And if it would be of interest or benefit to you, there's also water in the back. On the table to the left of you, we provided a printout of the PowerPoint as well as a hard copy of the request for proposal. So that said, I'm just going to do a quick overview of today's agenda, and then we'll kind of dive right into it. We'll do some introductions, we'll do some background for the grant, we'll talk a little bit about what the Executive Steering Committee is, what that process means, and how it led to the product that's before you. We'll do an overview of the request for the proposal, we'll talk about key dates, and finally we'll open it up for questions. So without further ado, I'll start by first having our panel members introduce themselves, and then we'll kick off. And I'll first turn it over to one of our co-chairs, Dr. B.J. Davis.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
I actually probably don't need this one. My name is Dr. B.J. Davis. Do you want to just do all introductions?
Just go ahead.
So, and I appreciate you all attending the Bidders Conference this morning. I was really privileged to co-chair the executive committee that put together this RFP. I'll let Ricardo and his staff talk to you about the technical aspects of the application, but I just wanted to share with you that the committee was a very broad-ranging committee. There were representatives from a lot of different stakeholders, including law enforcement, and there was people with legal background, clergy was represented, as well as individuals from the community, and also treatment providers like myself. We met several times. We had day-long meetings. The committee took it very, very seriously. We thought that the application, especially that we were proud that California and the governor really was responsive to some of the negative publicity that I think you're all aware of that had been in the media as it relates to law enforcement and community interactions, which had caused quite a bit of backlash. We thought that it was really important that we address that issue as it relates to our communities here in California, and specifically to address the communications and relationships between the community and law enforcement, especially communities that were very much impacted by law enforcement, and with not a complete focus, but with a focus on communities of color. We had a very lively conversation. We met in November and December over several weeks because we actually wanted to do due diligence to the application. We really wanted to put something together that would motivate applicants to really do some self-inventory around what was contributing to and influencing these negative interactions, and to really invest in creating strategies for their jurisdiction, their local communities, that really would do more than just give lip service to talking about wanting, to do the right thing and appreciating and respecting each other, but that would actually demonstrate those principles in a real way, so that we could in fact make changes as it relates to the interactions between law enforcement and community. And so I feel very good about the product that we eventually arrived at, and I just wanted to assure all the individuals that are attending today and the ones that are watching as this is being streamed, that you can trust that the process was really open, very vigorous, and very fair, and there was a diversity of perspectives that were invited, that were respected, that were heard, and that were considered. So I wanted to share that with you. If you have any questions as it relates to the process that I can answer, I'm here to answer those. And I do want to also recognize the staff of the BSCC. They were quite responsive, very, very well prepared. They made available to us a lot of resources, both that gave us feedback on not just what was local information, but national information. They even gave us homework, serious homework, binders full of homework. So, and we took it seriously so that we could really be up to date and really be informed about what we put together. So they did a really great job. You can really be proud of the work that they did. And with that, I will turn it over to the rest of the panel. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And so I just want to take a few minutes and have both Colleen and Patty say a few words, and then we'll commit to our agenda.
My name is Colleen Curtin. I'm a field representative here at the Board of State and Community Corrections, and along with Ricardo, worked as staff to this executive steering committee in putting this RFP together. Just a little bit about my background. My father was a police officer for 30 years, my husband for 20 years. So this grant program particularly is near and dear to my heart. And I want to echo what Dr. Davis said. I want to thank him for serving on the executive steering committee, and to say that there was a lot of great discussion and great compromise that happened. And we're really proud of this RFP. It's the first grant program of this kind in the country, we're being told. So we're very, very excited about what's to come. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Patty Ferguson. I'm an analyst here at the BSCC, and I have been working on this grant, and I'm really excited to be part of it.
Thank you. Okay, and we're going to just dive right into the PowerPoint. And like I said, the goal of the next few minutes, Colleen and we will co-present some of the key factors that we want you to be made aware of as it pertains to this request for proposal. And we will have plenty of room at the end to ask any questions that you have. We do ask if you have any questions, if you just hold them to the end. It's very likely that we may cover some of the things that you have raised. But if not, if it's super pertinent, let us know and we'll do our best to address it then. So as Colleen mentioned, the Strengthening Law Enforcement Community Relations Grant, this is a brand new grant program that was in the Budget Act of 2015. There's about $6 million that's allocated to the BSCC to administer this grant. Competitively, $5.7 million is what will go out to the field. The BSCC will withhold the rest to administer the grant. The intent of the grant, as the name implies, really is to take a meaningful look at how do you strengthen the relationship between law enforcement and the community. What are the practical steps that locally can result in an engaging process for these conversations to occur? Now, for us to get to this point, it's one thing for the Budget Act to include this language, and it's another thing for a committee to get together and to kind of foster an environment that would allow the product before you, the request for proposal, to be developed. And as Dr. Davis said, quite an impressive and hardworking group was assembled. And so for the purposes of not making any assumptions, I'll just take a step back to tell you what an executive steering committee is and what that process entails, and then we'll kind of show you how it connects to today's proposal. So executive steering committees, in its purest form, that's a process that's used by the Board of State Community Corrections, or the BSCC, to administer grants in this particular case. Also to oversee development of projects, be it for construction issues, be it for regulations issues. And typically what we do is we get subject matter experts in the field, such as Dr. Davis and his co-chair, Chief Bejarano from Chula Vista Police Department. But we get subject matter experts in the field, and we ask them to come in and to have this conversations around key topics. We prompt them with certain questions. And those questions inevitably result in the end product that staff develop. For this particular executive steering committee, we had 15 members on it, and we tried to account for different things: geographic diversity, background diversity, expertise, et cetera, et cetera. Also, we wanted to be mindful of this type of a project is really going to be most impactful if it's in the community. So representation from different community partners, be it community-based organizations, faith-based organizations. We also wanted to make sure that we had youthful representation on the committee. So, we tell you this to say that a concerted effort was made to develop a product that would reflect the community, irrespective of where you are in California. At the bottom, and as Dr. Davis alluded to, this committee really did take its job quite seriously and held three all-day sessions to try to develop its end product. And the way that this product was developed here, it wasn't as simple as a few folks get in the room and everyone had a great idea and it went together. We actually took a step back and we began by offering a training to the committee. And the purpose of that training was to not make assumptions about what each individual brought to the conversation, and also to ensure that we started with a place of knowledge and not from assumption. So what does that mean for your purposes? The committee considered lots of different things in its training. We talked about procedural justice and what that means. We talked about implicit and explicit bias. We talked about what was occurring in California and nationally around these issues of officer-involved shootings. We talked about what efforts California was currently engaging in to try to promote best practices, and we had a member on the committee from the Salinas Police Department who spoke to their experiences. So all by way of showing that the committee really did try to do its homework before eventually kind of landing towards the RFP. But that said, how did they in fact, land at the product that they have before you? So as mentioned prior, one of the things that we did is we try to provide our committee members, meaningful work in advance of our meetings, so that when people arrive, they're prepared to engage in conversation. We probably had, I'd say, 10 plus substantive articles and products for them. And one of those was the President's Task Force in 21st Century Policing Report, which as many of you probably are familiar with now is very central to this request for proposal. And the committee really did take a lot of time to kind of step back and ask themselves, what is it that we want to accomplish with this request for proposal? They talked a lot about community engagement and how impactful it would be for both law enforcement, in this case, the sheriff departments, the police departments, and the community to start the conversation from a place of equalness, so that one did not have the advantage of the other, so that it wasn't an adversarial relationship, but really what are the things that they could build into, create a process where folks would feel comfortable having difficult conversations, which would then be supported by the availability of grant dollars in this instance. So after reviewing quite a few reports, the task force on 21st century policing for the president is in essence what they landed on. And that report, which was issued in May 2015, there's some underlying themes or some, I think some basics there that I think really kind of capture what the committee wanted to convey. So as mentioned before, community policing, it was a fairly substantive thing that was discussed, building community capital. And what is exactly does that mean? It talks about how to ensure that both parties come to the table and feel as if they have an equal say. So for the law enforcement perspective, not feeling as if they would be drowned out. And then from the community perspective, also not feeling like they're going to be drowned out. So how do you create a request for proposal that ideally allows both parties to feel like they can engage in meaningful conversation? The way that this report is designed is it's built around 6 pillars. And Colleen will talk about this a little bit more in greater detail. But the pillars are fundamental aspects to the grant. In that, applicants must address at least pillar 1, which you see on the screens before you, plus 1 additional pillar. So for example, you see building trust and legitimacy. I'll just expand on that one a little bit because it's a required pillar for all applicants. The committee looked at some of the principles that were embedded in that and thought, irrespective of any approaches that you may want to consider, this would capture the essence of what they wanted to convey. So it touches on everything from procedural justice to community engagement, to sustainability with meaningful conversations in the community. And that really kind of formed the crux of the request for proposal. And then going forward, you see some of the other topics there. Mindful that we did not want to assume that one particular pillar would cover all the needs of the state of California. The committee adopted all the pillars and in essence said, you are eligible to apply for all 6 of the pillars. While we want to make sure that at a minimum you address pillar 1, if the need in your community is more specific towards technology and social media, that's an option that's available for you. If training and education is more pertinent, and so on and so forth. So that really is the crux in terms of an overview of some of the key points. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Colleen, and we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the more specifics in the grant, and perhaps try to anticipate some of the questions that you guys may have by providing some greater detail.
Thanks, Ricardo. So the report Ricardo mentioned looks like this. It's about 100 pages long with the appendices. And if you do nothing else, I would highly recommend that you print this report out and read through it prior to convening any efforts to develop a proposal. It's very important, as he said, the steering committee felt that, this report captured everything that we wanted to capture here in California. And so why reinvent the wheel? Why try to come up with some program areas when they're already existing in this report? So very important to read this report. And as Ricardo said, every proposal must address pillar number 1 in some way, as building trust and legitimacy. The committee felt should run through any efforts that a community engages in. We've already gotten a few questions from people about what kinds of activities can we fund with this grant money? What can we do with this grant money? And the committee was purposefully, I think, I don't want to say vague, but purposely did not list specific activities in this RFP. And that was very purposeful because we recognize that communities in California are very different. The needs and the problems facing communities are very different. And the committee felt strongly that communities should come together to identify their need. What do the problems look like in your community? What have you already been doing? And develop a plan that is unique to your community and activities or strategies that are unique to your community. It's the committee talked about innovation and creativity. That's encouraged. So to come up with activities or strategies that you feel address the need in your community. So local flexibility, innovation, creativity. This grant is pretty wide open. But what you do have to do is make the connection back to that report, make the connection back to those pillars, pillar number 1 and an additional pillar. So always keeping that in the back of your mind as you're developing a plan. Let's see. Eligible applicants, the Budget Act specified that the money go to local law enforcement, and the committee actually had a lot of discussions around what does that mean exactly? Does that mean police departments, sheriff's departments? We talked about even perhaps including colleges or universities. And ultimately, the committee landed on municipal police departments, county sheriff's departments, and cities that contract for police services. So those are the eligible applicants, and must serve as the lead agency. They are referred to as the lead agency in the RFP. However, the committee did not want to lose the focus on communities, and so therefore made it a requirement that the lead agency partner with their community. And that partnership is extremely important and really is the cornerstone of this grant. So reaching out, law enforcement agencies reaching out to their partners and trying to engage them in this process of building a proposal. And there was an acknowledgement that, you know, law enforcement can't do this alone. They need to be supported by the communities that they serve and vice versa. So a very important factor in this grant, and you'll see later on, we'll look at the rating factors. Community engagement is weighted pretty heavily in this grant, second only to the project description. In partnership, what does that mean? That means an active engagement, bringing people to the table, an equal voice, a role in decision-making, in the development of a proposal and implementation of the proposal. It means that you have formal letters of agreement from your community partners. And again, I'll talk in a minute, but it means that that there's pass-through money. So a requirement that the committee came up with was that the lead agency must pass through a minimum of 30% of the grant funds that are requested to one or more of those community partners that are engaging with them in the process. A technical requirement for eligibility is that law enforcement agencies must self-certify compliance with Penal Code Section 11108, and that is that penal code is attached as Appendix A to the RFP, and it references a DOJ database for stolen and lost property that law enforcement agencies must self-certify. So there's a form in the RFP that must be included with the proposal. Moving on to funding information. The committee, again, spent a lot of time debating, discussing what would be an appropriate ceiling for applicants, and landed on $600,000. So an individual applicant may apply for up to $600,000. We encourage applicants to take a close look and do very careful budget planning. You don't have to apply for the maximum. You can apply for less. Apply for what you need and what you know you can, or think reasonably that you can spend. Joint applications are allowable. So if 2 or more agencies want to partner, the ceiling goes up to $850,000 to be shared among those departments in a way that they choose. The committee felt strongly that that local agencies should make an investment in these efforts, and therefore discussed a match and landed on 20%. So lead agencies are responsible for matching grant dollars at 20%. That match can come in the form of a cash match or an in-kind match. Cash match would be any dollars that are laid out by the lead agency in staffing, equipment, operating expenses, etc. In-kind match would be anything that's donated, either by the lead agency or by its partners. So your partners can help with the match, can help a lead agency meet that match requirement. As I mentioned earlier, there's a requirement for 30% pass-through to 1 or more community partners. So that essentially means lead agencies have to enter into subcontracts and share the funds with their community partners. So that's a way of really formalizing and cementing those relationships. So a 30% pass-through. And finally, data collection and evaluation is very important. And here at the BSCC, whenever we issue an RFP, whenever we issue or develop a new grant program, we're focusing on the principles of evidence-based practice. And evidence-based practice says that you collect data. You collect data and you measure your efforts. You measure your outcomes. And so this is an effort, this requirement is an effort to ensure that applicants are looking at data collection and evaluation. How are we going to measure the effectiveness of whatever we choose to do at the end of this grant? So 5% of the requested funds, or $20,000, whichever is greater, must be set aside for data collection and evaluation efforts. That can be through a contract with an evaluator. It can be done in-house, but it has to show on your budget that you are dedicating that 5% or that $20,000 to data collection and evaluation. The grant period is a 2-year period, starting July 1, 2016 through June 30th of 2018. So whatever funds you apply for, you have 2 years to spend them down. So I want to talk for a minute about the merit review. So once proposals come in, the same executive steering committee that developed this RFP will also read and score the proposals. We have a process here whereby we train the executive steering committee in how to use the rating factors that have been developed. They come up with a score based on how well an applicant addresses each of the rating factors that are within the proposal narrative and the budget narrative, which I'll talk about in just a minute. Once those scores, the applicants, the ESC members read and score the proposals, and then they come together in a final meeting where they discuss those scores and come up with a ranked list of proposals. It's important to note that applicants must receive 60% of the total weighted score in order to be eligible for funding. So we're going to look at that 60% must be met. And the committee came up with that requirement in order to ensure that the BSCC is funding the most quality proposals possible. And as I said, a ranked list will be developed. So looking at page 13, if everyone has their RFP in front of them, I want to go over the rating factors. There are 5 rating factors. Project need, which is worth 25% of the points. Project description, weighted at 35%. Community engagement, weighted at 25%. Project evaluation, weighted at 10%. And budget, weighted at 5%. So that gives you an idea when you're writing your proposal. You can see here where you want to really spend your time, focus your efforts, where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. So turning to page 15 now, I want to talk about exactly what goes in your proposal packet. The proposal instructions begin on page 15. The first thing that you will complete is the applicant's information form, which is found on page 16. It's very important that you complete this accurately and completely. These are the contact people for your grant, and it's very important when it comes time to do contracting that all of this information is correct. So that's the technical piece. Moving to section 2, this is your proposal narrative. This is the bulk of your proposal. This is what will be scored by the executive steering committee. Applicants are allowed 30 pages to do their proposal narrative. Each section within the proposal narrative should have a heading according to the headings that you see on starting on page 17. It should be written in narrative form. The bullet points here are there to guide you, to provide you, some direction in how to develop your proposal, but it should be written in narrative form. And you'll see at the top of page 17, it is at the discretion of the applicant to determine how to use the total page limit in addressing each section. As a guide, the applicant may want to review the point value weight given to each rating factor according to table 2, and that's the table we just went over. It's important to note these 30 pages do not include that applicant information form that I just went over. It does not include the budget, which we'll go over in a minute, and it does not include any of the attachments. So just the proposal narrative, you have 30 pages to do. Moving to section 3 on page 20, this is the budget. Every applicant must complete a budget table according to the one here on page 20. There are 8 budget line items here. We recognize these may be different than line items that your agency uses, but we ask that you develop your budget according to these. Salaries and benefits. This is salaries and benefits of the lead agency only. All other salaries and benefits for partners will be listed in another one of the categories. Number 2 is services and supplies. Number 3 is professional services. This would be subcontracts with consultants or other governmental agencies, other public agencies. Community partner contracts, those would be subcontracts with community-based organizations, nonprofits, faith-based, etc. Number 5 is indirect costs. Applicants may apply for up to 10% of their grant funds to be used as for indirect costs, administrative overhead. Number 6 is data collection and evaluation. And I mentioned this earlier, a minimum of 5% or $20,000, whichever is greater, depending on how much you request. Number 7 is fixed assets and equipment. And number 8 is other, and anything that doesn't fit into one of the above 7 categories would go here, for example, travel or training. And you'll see in this table that you lay out grant funds, you lay out cash match, in-kind match, and then a total. That's it. Sure.
And just a reminder when you're filling out that form that it's a Word document, it's not an Excel spreadsheet. So please take your time and just check your math. I know that sounds like a really silly thing, but after years of experience, I just can't remind you enough to please check your math. It's a Word document, not an Excel document. Thank you.
Okay. On page 21, this is a budget narrative. So this is where you will provide some detailed information to back up those numbers that you just listed in that table. There's no page limit on this. And so you will go through and, following the instructions here, provide, again, just some line item detail to support those numbers that are in that budget. And within the narrative, we ask you to differentiate between your grant funds and your match within each of the 8 categories. Required, page 23 is an important document. This is a checklist. So as you're assembling your proposal, you want to go through this checklist and make sure you have everything there. Section 1, the applicant's information form. Section 2, the narrative. Section 3, the budget. Then we'll go through the attachments. Attachment A is the California Penal Code section. B are the letters of agreement that are required for your community partners. Appendix C is a list of your community partners. Appendix D is a work plan chart. So this work plan chart I'll talk about for just a moment. Turn to page 27. This work plan is intended to support the project description that you lay out in your proposal narrative. So this is intended to be a sort of at a glance summary of your goals, objectives, and activities. So this is important, an important attachment that again should support whatever you've laid out in your narrative. So this is a cut and paste kind of document. You can cut and paste this table into another document and attach it to your proposal. Optional attachments, back on page 23, board resolution. We do require a board resolution prior to grant award agreement. So cities and counties that can get started on that now are encouraged to do so. We know that some of you cannot do that until after the grant's been awarded, but we want to make that an option for you here And letters of support. If you are going to include letters of support, these are from parties who are not formally partnering on the grant. So these would be, from those community or other, perhaps politicians, et cetera. There are a maximum of 3 may be included with the proposal. No other attachments will be considered for rating purposes. So it's important that you just stick to what is listed here on this proposal checklist. So funding, some of you may have heard in the governor's proposed budget that came out, we are looking at an additional $6 million potentially for this grant coming in fiscal year 2016-17. And rather than issue a new RFP, because it would be so close to this one, we have decided instead that the ranked list that is developed from this RFP process, should this money become available, we will move down the ranked list to award additional jurisdictions the next $6 million. So it will be a total of $12 million minus the 5% administrative fee for BSCC. So we're excited that we'll be able to award a greater number of jurisdictions some of this grant money. And we'll be keeping you all posted as we get closer to the final budget. Those, should that money come through, those additional grants will start in 2016 as soon as possible, as close to July 1 as possible. And again, we'll have to keep you posted as the budget moves through the process. Key dates on page, let's see, page 14. This is page 14 from the RFP. Proposals are due. We ask, first of all, I'm sorry, that everyone who is intending to apply submit a notice of intent. This is an informal letter or email to us. And the purpose for this is just to allow us to plan for how many proposals we might receive. It's going to help us planning with our executive steering committee. Those are due by March 18th. No one will be precluded from applying if they forget to submit one, and no one will be required to apply if they change their mind later, but please submit those by March 18th. Grant proposals are due to the board by April 1st. April 1st, 5 p.m. We require an original signed copy here, physically here at our building by 5 p.m. Postmarks will not be accepted. And we're asking that you also scan and email a copy of the proposal to us by April 1st. Once the proposals come in, BSCC staff, Ricardo and I and Patty will begin a technical review of the proposals. So during this time, we'll be looking for non-substantive items that could be corrected. We don't want to disallow any applications from the process for minor page limit problems or margin problems. We'll be looking for non-substantive adjustments. We'll be working with you during a 2-week period to correct those. And once the proposals are finalized, we will be convening the executive steering committee and they will begin the rating process. We anticipate that process to take place in April and May. The board, the BSCC board, will meet on June 9th of this year. Any funding recommendations that the ESC develops have to be approved by the board. So we will be presenting them to the full board on June 9th, and then grants will begin July 1. So it's a tight process in there from June 9th to July 1. We will be working to get applicants into contract. And so if you need to get on your governing board's agenda, I would do that now, maybe a placeholder agenda item to make sure you can get whatever that board approval that you need. There will be a grantee orientation once grants are awarded as early as possible, where we will go over all the technical, administrative, and reporting requirements that are tied to this grant. If you want to take a look on our website, in addition to the RFP, we have an attachment to a sample, a boilerplate contract with terms and conditions. So if you want to, read through those and you'll get a flavor for the reporting requirements that will be required for this grant. And that concludes our presentation. So for now, we'd ask, anything to add?
First of all, thank you, Colleen, for that comprehensive overview. Just one other tidbit I should have mentioned off the top. In part, I think it's assumed. Throughout this process, we did mention prior that, we have an executive steering committee that's going to be reviewing these proposals. And on purpose, we did list all their names. But if by chance you do know who they are, please do not contact any of the members. We really want them to partake in this process subject of any, perceived bias or anything of that nature. If you have any questions, certainly today would be a great avenue. You can absolutely send questions to us via email. All that information is included for you in the RFP. You have my contact information. But short of that, we just ask that just in lieu of the process that you please just restrict any communication to Colleen, to Patty, or to myself, and to leave Dr. Davis and other of our members out of it. And if questions were to be directed to them, we would just ask that they send those back to us. And just so you know, a large part of that is so that we can ensure we provide a fair and consistent answer to everyone. So I just wanted to add that in there.
And I would also add that all of the questions that come up today and tomorrow, we'll be doing this again tomorrow down in Los Angeles. We'll be compiling all of those questions and answers and putting them on our website so that everyone has the benefit of reviewing those questions and answers.
Okay, so that, as Colleen said, that really concludes our portion of it. At this time, we'd really like to turn it over to you, and I'd start by saying, don't be shy. You came all the way here. If there's questions, if you can, please come up to the podium. We hate to be so formal, but as we said, we are streaming the meeting. So if you can, please just speak into the microphone and just state your name and your question, and we'll figure it out from there. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Galvan with the City of Selma, and I have a couple questions. I wanted to make sure, if we're, just to confirm something on the budget, if we're gonna contract out our evaluation piece, obviously it's gonna be in professional and not in the other, and it would just be 20,000 or 5%, whichever's higher. I just wanted to confirm.
Actually, that's a good question. Your data collection and evaluation contract would go actually in the data collection and evaluation line and not on the professional services. So that is an exception. So thank you for pointing that out.
Okay. Another question I have, are you going to be looking at regional distribution of funds, say Northern California, Southern, the Central Valley, and also by size of agencies? There's smaller police, smaller communities versus larger communities. Will you be looking at that as well?
Thank you. So I'll take the latter two questions. So the committee did discuss in great detail that regional approach, small, medium, large, cities, et cetera, et cetera. Ultimately, the committee left off that they wanted to fund the best proposals irrespective of geographic location. So in this case, and just to kind of tie back into Colleen's presentation earlier about the importance of really making sure that when you write your proposal, that those key sections are addressed in detail, and you see the areas where things are greatly weighted. The best overall proposals will be funded.
I also wanted, excuse me, I wanted to add that we had a lot of conversation about distribution and trying to ensure that small communities or small law enforcement agencies had a fair representation and a fair opportunity to apply for this, as well as some of the more larger jurisdictions, which is why there are two amounts that you can apply for. The one 600,000 would be just for one lead agency, but the 850,000 is actually for two lead agencies. So that's not for a lead agency and a community partner. That's actually for two law enforcement agencies that may be smaller, or and I actually, being from the Central Valley, I understand some of the smaller communities down there, but where they may, law enforcement, they may want to partner and actually in partnership, they may have more resources to be able to apply for the RFP and use the information in a community-based way. And so they can actually apply for 850,000 as a joint application. So that's, we did that so that we would encourage smaller areas to actually apply versus, having an unfair advantage for some of the larger jurisdictions that may have more resources on hand to be able to apply for this. So I wanted to make sure that you were that. And one other caveat, since I'm going to be one of the individuals reading this, Colleen didn't say, those 30 pages are double spaced. Just want to let you know.
I was wondering if the committee is looking primarily to fund agencies that are sort of just beginning their strengthening their relationships with their communities, or whether there's also an opening for agencies that feel that they've come a pretty good way down the road and are trying to expand or extend their work.
Either or. I think that the committee recognized that a lot of jurisdictions in California have been doing this work for years. And I think either would be encouraged, and the language in the RFP allows for that. So I think if you've already got efforts underway, you're going to be ahead of the game probably in describing your need and hopefully your community engagement. So either would be appropriate.
I'll just add one more thing. I think Colleen answered it perfectly. Whatever approach in terms of wherever you are on that spectrum, just to kind of state the obvious, as long as you can tie it to Pillar 1, plus whatever it is that you intend to do, I think, for the sake of the raters, that would be most beneficial.
Hello, I'm from Alameda County Sheriff's Office, and I'm wondering if it's possible to use any of the funding for physical infrastructure, capital-related work in the community.
I'll ask you a question in turn. And this is, I'll just say maybe conceptual. What do you have in mind and how would it relate? So it's kind of like the last comment that I made. Whatever approach you're looking to implement, you have to tie it back to the grant. So I'd be curious to hear what you have in mind potentially and how it would tie into the pillars.
We're looking at how our commercial corridor is set up in our particular area, and the lack of jobs that are available for our community having an impact on crime. And also, additionally, our current substation is located really off of that corridor. So the community, it really looks like a fortress outside of the community that you have to get to. And we're working on bringing the substation to the corridor as part of a community integration effort so that the police are actually on the corridor with the community in addition to some fun elements like recreation and play and new local eateries, so that we can create jobs, create fun, and create relationships with the cops in a more authentic way. And we need the capital to build that out.
I think maybe in this, because it's a very specific instance, it might be beneficial if we talked afterwards and if you gave us your contact information. I don't think our overarching, response, which is typically just to tie back to the proposal, applies quite here. So I think we probably would just need a quick sidebar just to get some more information from you.
Okay.
Good morning, Lieutenant Roman Noriega, Sacramento Police. One question about need. What are you using to gauge need? Would that be crime rates or?
I would say, so following the instructions on page 17, looking at the bulleted items there, describe the demographics of your community and how they impact the state of law enforcement community relations. Describe recurring issues of concern between local law enforcement and the communities they serve. Describe the process by which you ensure community input, and if applicable, describe needs, challenges, or tensions with protected classes or vulnerable populations. I think within those areas, I think the committee will be looking for applicants to describe their need in a way that makes sense to their community. So if that means looking at crime rates or other, I think they will be looking for some data, or some demographic data. But I think that they've left it a little bit open so that a community can develop their needs statement based on what their community looks like.
Gotcha.
Is that-
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And I want to weigh in on that. These are really good questions, and actually, all the questions that you've presented so far were questions that the executive committee actually anticipated, and we had long conversations about them. So that makes me feel good about our process. But we anticipated this as well, and so and again, I want to make sure that I want to emphasize that one of the things that was throughout the executive committee meetings was fairness. We really wanted this to be fair, understanding that different jurisdictions had different amounts of resources available. And so we understood that some jurisdictions may have access to demographic information or data collection that maybe other jurisdictions, just because they're smaller, might not have. We understood that. So what we're looking for, but we wanted to make sure that individuals applying had done due diligence about identifying the need in their community. So we actually decided that we would use both qualitative data, if you have it, we surely we want to consider that, but also, quantitative data, but also qualitative data, meaning that, if you can document in a pretty substantive way the need in your community based upon incidents that happen, anecdotal information, things that are in the news that may not be captured in an Excel spreadsheet, we will consider that as well. And so just make sure that you demonstrate that you've actually done some research and some work yourselves as lead agencies on what your community needs. And that's what we're going to be looking for when we read the proposals.
Thank you. And second question, in regards to lead agencies and possibly partnering dual law enforcement agencies, is probation, if we decide to partner with probation, would that be considered a law enforcement agency, or how would that fall in?
So in this instance, and you're with SAC-PD, right? Yeah. So in this instance, so SAC-PD would still be the lead agency and probation would be considered a partner.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to clarify, you may understand this already, but you'd be limited to the 600,000 though. Probation cannot be considered a co-lead agency for purposes of joint. Okay.
Good morning, Julia Nix from the City of Salinas. And our question is, we have a division that works primarily with community partners, but we have a very strong partnership with our police department. With our police department being lead agency, would there be any problems if our division supported that agency in the management of the grant? And coordinating with our CBOs and working with police in doing that, would that be a problem at all?
Could you restate the beginning? You're asking if you could have another agency, a community-based organization?
No, it would be our division within the City of Salinas. Our division is in the City of Salinas, but we work very closely with many community partners, and because of the very limited resources that our department has, we are looking to work with them to help them to apply for this grant to management for them to basically be that staff for them, in the sense that we can still get everything we need for this grant for them and for our sheriff's department, but then help them in the management component of it, and then any other needs that they need with that.
That's okay, but the police department or sheriff's department has to be the lead agency, yes, and the lead and the applicant.
Yes.
And then if they would list, if they would be subcontracting with you, or
if we're both cities, so would it be considered a subcontractor for both city? Because it's the City of Salinas, the police department be the applicant, we're just a division under our city manager's office.
Then no.
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
What you're proposing is fine.
Wouldn't it be professional services?
Well, it's sometimes tricky. It could go under professional services if it's another city department other than the lead agency. So the lead agency is the police department, and you're with another department within the city.
Yes.
technically that should go under professional services. Thanks.
And just to be clear, so the level of work that you be providing, is it more so to help them get started? Like what would that level of work look like initially?
I think we're still in the planning processes of that, of seeing how we can do that because of the flattening of the police department. And then also with the staffing issues the sheriff's department's having. So what we're looking at is to help bolster with what they have, build up with what they've got, and then move forward. So it is very early, and we have a few ideas, so it's very early in the planning process. So provide that support for management,
Right.
paperwork, all that kind of thing, and as it gets moving forward, or any kind of coordination or organization that needs to be done.
So when you guys are thinking about it right now in its conceptual phase, is it like the day-to-day once, if it were funded, or just more so just the lead up to it that you guys would manage that component of it?
Even if it's funded,
Even if it's
funded, yes. Because we do have a very strong, bond with our police department, and work very closely with them on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Patrick Leung, I'm with the San Francisco Police Department. If we developed a proposal in partnership with San Francisco Sheriff's Department, would that proposal be considered a joint application? We're both part of the city and county of San Francisco.
Yeah, yes, it would.
Okay, thank you.
I want to follow up on a question that was asked earlier on data collection and evaluation, and I just want to clarify that whether you are subcontracting for that or using lead agency staff, pull that out and list it under data collection and evaluation on the budget sheet, whether it's in-house or contracted. Are there any other questions?
Good morning, guys. D'Angelo Mack, Well-Spaced Health, Sacramento Community. I just have a quick question around the proposed additional funding that's going to be released, or may be released. If a lead agency isn't approved the first time around, do they have to submit again at the July date, or will you guys review what you already received?
We're going to use the list, the ranked list that's generated from this process, and just keep moving down the ranked list, considering any eligible applicants. So anyone that scores that 60% or above. So no new RFP and no new proposal will have to be submitted.
Thank you.
I just want to provide a little bit of feedback around the question for this one about the professional services, because I was listening to you talking about being a part of I guess the county or the city government and wanting to help the police department. I actually think that, as a person that's thinking about the RFP, I think that's actually a really good idea. I think that what would be, that makes sense to me, because we want to foster as many applications as possible, because we want to fund this, because we want to see the funds used to, in fact, do what it says it's going to do, which is improve law enforcement and community relationships. I think that what would be important in that, though, would just make sure that in your narrative of the project, that you really clearly state, what you're going to be doing, who you are, what you're going to be doing it, your history of doing it, and to make sure that it's clear to the reader that you're not a community-based provider that's going to be accessing the 30%, but you're actually part of the you're going to be a professional provider or consultant or for the lead agency, and you're going to be working in administrative and management. I actually get that as a community-based provider. I understand what that means, but I think that really it's going to be how well you're able to clearly define that and what you're going to be doing and how it's going to, at the end of the day, increase the likelihood of the application and the strategy that you're going to use being successful. Because that's really what we're looking for. When we read this, we really want applicants that we can tell have done due diligence, they really understand what the outcomes are, and they really put some thought into how they're going to implement that strategy. And we can see that there's some thought around what's going to increase the likelihood of getting the outcomes that are the goals of the application. So I hope that helps. I don't want to discourage you from doing it at all. I think that it really is just about how well you describe what you're going to be doing. Does that make sense? All right.
Are there any other questions? Going once, going twice. All right, seeing no other questions, and I'll offer up that Colleen and I, and hopefully Dr. Davis, if you guys have a few minutes as well, we'll stick around, and if any of you want to talk one-on-one, I think there's two of you that we do want to kind of follow up on, just to make sure that we understand some of your questions that we provide some clarity on. The Sheriff's Department, for sure, in Alameda. And then I think we want to follow up just a little bit more with you as well around that city relationship, just to make sure that we're really clear. And like I said, part of it is we do want to put these into some FAQs that we're going to post online, as Colleen said. We'll have those up probably in the next coming weeks. So that's it. Thank you all for coming out. If there's other questions that you have, you certainly are able to email me. My contact information is in the request for proposal. And we will do our best to get back to you. And thank you all so much today.
Thank you.
Thank you.